Hello and welcome back to the Frogs of War podcast. I'm Anthony North. That's Russ Hodges. We're going to talk all things TCU athletics today on the eve of NFL draft and here Wednesday night. And we've got a huge run sheet here to get through tonight. So we'll try to hit everything pretty quick for you. A lot of things happening in the world of TCU athletics as the spring seasons start to wind down and we head into the kind of the meat of the baseball season. But first, Russ, how are we doing tonight?
Feeling good, man. Glad we could get on the podcast this evening. I know both of us want to sit down and have a couple drinks for the draft tomorrow. One of the most exciting days of the NFL season, and got about a dozen players or so, I think, on the TCU side, hoping to hear their names called over these next few days. So it's going to be really exciting to see where some of these frogs make their homes in the NFL, and excited to talk about it a little bit. And things are going good. Happy to hop on and let's get right to it.
Yeah, for sure. The NFL draft is definitely one of my favorite things to follow all year, and one of my favorite events on the sports calendar. And as a Tennessee Titans fan, it's one of the over the years, it's been one of the things that's been most interesting about being a Titans fan is following the NFL draft. It hasn't always been the best on the field. Hopefully this season, um, maybe the Titans will pick up some Horned Frogs and I can go get a Quentin Johnston jersey or something. I don't know if he'll go 11, but I guess that leads us to the first question. Will there be any Horned Frogs drafted in the first round? Quentin Johnston, the wide receiver, is really the only big body wide receiver in this draft. A lot of kind of smaller guys, speedy guys, slot guys, but Quentin Johnston checks a lot of boxes that nobody else in this draft does. But there's been a lot of buzz that he's kind of slipping down draft boards. Russ, what do you think he's going to be drafted on Thursday night?
I think he's a first rounder for sure. I do agree that, right after the bowl season, I think the hype for Quentin Johnston was very high with what he did in the Fiesta Bowl and the athletic traits that he has and the measurables, they really jump out and what he did at the combine as well. But there have been a couple other players like Zay Flowers, the wide receiver from Boston College, that has really shot up the draft board over the last several weeks. And then you also have Jackson Smith and Jigba, the standout wide receiver for Ohio State, that at a time was the consensus, unquestioned, the number one receiver in this class, but then had the injuries this past year, didn't play at all, and people wondered whether or not he might slip in the first round as a result of that. But I think coming around to it sort of seems like Njigba is going to be the first receiver taken off the board. And then after that, it'll be between Zay Flowers and Quentin Johnston. I think it kind of depends on what teams are looking for. I'm thinking mid to late first round is probably where we'll see Quentin Johnston go. If I had to put my finger on it, I guess in the 15 to 25 range, I would say is probably where he gets taken. I'd be surprised if he goes earlier than that. I would be very surprised if he falls out of the first round. I know there was a little bit of drama that the NFL didn't extend him an invitation to the back room or wherever they have the.
Yeah, he's throwing his own party instead. Yeah.
Why not throw your own party? Yeah, bring your family, bring your friends. I think in a way that's a lot more fun than going to draft day. But no, I think he's still a first round pick to me. I think his production, his athleticism, what he can do in the open field, he's going to be a difference maker for whichever team takes him in the first round. It may not be as early as we may have thought, but I still think that he's a first round pick.
Yeah, for sure. I think he probably falls in that Justin Jefferson range in the mid 20s. There's been a lot of buzz with the Ravens or with the Bills or even the Chiefs at the very end of the first round. So um, I see it. I see it pretty hard to envision him dropping out of the first round. Just the traits and the tape and his performance. There are things that he can do on a football field that just nobody else in this draft can do. But I see where people can dig into the tape and find nits to pick. Um, I think there were moments through the season where, whether it's the fumble in the Big 12 championship game against Kansas State, whether it's some of the interceptions that Max Duggan threw were kind of jump balls to Quentin Johnston that you would think Quentin Johnston should have at least had a play on the ball or had, some way to big body his way, maybe not to making the catch, but to at least prevent an interception. So um, I can see those things, but there's just so much more tape of him making spectacular plays, running crisp routes, making all of the catches. And once he gets that ball in his hands too, just taking off or putting a move on a defensive back and making his way down the field. So I'd certainly be excited if I was in whomever he goes to. That fan base should be thrilled to have Quentin Johnston joining their program. After Quentin Johnston, what's next? I think that most likely Steve Avila appears to be the next in line to be picked. Um, is it possible we hear him on Thursday too, or is he definitely a day two selection?
I'm I would say that the early middle part of the second round is a really good place to take interior linemen, guys who are sort of plug and play starters, even late first round. And I know that Steve Avila has done some top 30 visits with multiple teams. And I think when you look at the interior line prospects, he really ranks among the top guys in the draft, not only with his tape, but also what he did at the combine. And like a lot of these TCU players, athletically, they tested near the top of each position group in all of the different workouts. And Steve Avila, his versatility is something that I think should stand out for an NFL team, and that he's a first team all Big 12 player at multiple positions. He can play center, he can play guard. He's got tremendous size for an interior position at was it 6'4", 330 pounds. That's almost offensive tackle size where he's playing an interior position where he was he was a stalwart for the TCU offensive line, and he didn't have any problem staying healthy. I think he was a really good leader for TCU and wearing one of the captain's badges that they brought in this year under Sonny Dykes. And as far as the draft goes, I'd love to see him go at the very end of the first round, kind of a late surprise, sort of what we saw a few years ago when Jalen Reagor goes in the first round to the Eagles, and we kind of figured, okay, yeah, Jalen Reagor is likely a first rounder, but Jeff Gladney sneaks in there, I think, at 31 to the Minnesota Vikings, and the Frogs wind up having two guys go in the first round. I think Steve Avila is a first round talent. It just depends on what teams are looking for at those late spots in the first round, and also just do you want to wait a little bit to take that position? I would say that the interior guys don't carry as much of a premium as the guys on the outside do. So the early linemen that go are going to be your offensive tackles like Paris Johnson from Ohio State and Peter Skoronsky from Northwestern, Darnell Wright from Tennessee. Those are going to be the guys that go early in the first round, and then late first round into the second round is when we're going to start seeing the guards and the centers be taken. So I would love to see it. Um, if I had to put it on the scale of 0% to 100%, I'm going to say probably 35% chance is what I would say. But you
Okay.
never know. There are always some teams that surprise you on draft day. So we'll see what happens for sure.
That's probably a higher percentage than I would have put it, but he's definitely generating a lot of positive buzz. Pretty much any scout, any media figure, any coach that comes out and has anything to say about him, it's all 100% positive. So I think you can't get anyone to say a bad word about Steve Avila, and so I think that he is probably a top 40 guy. I think he'll go very early on Friday. But I'd have it closer to like a 10% chance that he's selected in the first round. I think there's just particularly if all these quarterbacks go and then all of the defensive backs. I think there's just too many other premium positions that teams will select, even if Avila is one of the top one or two interior offensive linemen, just for position scarcity, position priority. It probably knocks him down to one of those teams picking in the top 40, and maybe somebody will trade up to come and get him to make sure to go get that guy who can be a starter for a long time, holding down an offensive line. After those two, I think there's probably going to be a pretty significant tier break for Horned Frogs going in the draft. I don't know. Do you see it the same way? Where do we start seeing the likes of Kendre Miller, Travius Hodges Tomlinson, D. Winters, Dylan Horton, etc.?
Kendre Miller would be my guess for which TCU player goes next, and I feel like third round is a safe guess for where he goes, maybe in the second round. And I say maybe second round because I know that he's had some top 30 visits as well with a couple of NFL teams. And it's kind of unfortunate for Kendre Miller because of the injury in the postseason. He hasn't been able to work out a whole lot, wasn't able to compete at the combine, even though he was invited, was not able to work out at the TCU Pro Day, but has still been able to do all of the interviews and speak with the media and speak with teams and interview with teams. So the production is undeniable at the collegiate level, and I think like most TCU players that are vying to be drafted, the tape kind of speaks for itself, and it's just a matter of where. Similar to Steve Avila, we know that running back like interior line is just not a super premium position, especially in today's NFL where you can get a productive running back in the third, fourth, fifth rounds of the draft every year. So I would say Bijan Robinson is probably the only running back. Maybe Jahmyr Gibbs goes in the first round as well, just because of how versatile he is as a pass catcher and what he can do in the passing game. Um, One or two running backs are going to go in the first round, in my opinion. And then after that, is it Zach Charbonnet from UCLA? Is it Kendre Miller? Is it uh, any of the other guys? Maybe Zach Evans from Ole Miss might sneak
Yeah.
in somewhere, although he's pretty far down on the rankings from
Tate
what I've seen.
Bigsby or Chase Brown or Sean Tucker, or I think there's a pretty good teardrop there after Gibbs that Kendre Miller might be at the top of. They're kind of battling with Charbonnet depending on kind of what
Mhm.
your preference is, but um, I think to me Kendre Miller should be at the top of that next tier. He just the tape speaks for itself. I mean, the way he's able to do, he can run through you, he can run by you, he can run around you, all of that, and so I think he will be a big time contributor pretty quickly in the NFL. But I think given that the running back, yeah, they will tend to fall, and it ends up a lot of times maybe unfairly, running backs just aren't going to be that prioritized in the draft unless you're really doing everything on the field, like Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs are expected to do in the NFL. So yeah, I could see late third, I could see fourth, but yeah, I couldn't see him falling much further than that. Maybe early fifth, but he's just too good to let fall too far from there. I think next would probably be Tomlinson. THT, the cornerback, obviously has the bloodlines, has the accolades, earning the Thorpe Award this past season at TCU for the top defensive back in college football. But he does not have the size. So being on the smaller end, he missed out on an invitation to the Senior Bowl as the director there of the Senior Bowl said he only likes to take players who are going to get drafted, which I think is a pretty silly thing to say about the Thorpe Award winner, who clearly shut down receivers all over the country, some of the best receivers in college football through his time at TCU. So Travius Hodges Tomlinson will get drafted. Where he will get drafted, I don't know, but I think I've seen as high as a third round, but probably those mid rounds, day 3 sometime on Saturday, he should hear his name called, I would think.
Yeah, Trey Tomlinson and D Winters are the two guys that I think are really good to go in the fourth to fifth round range, early part of day three, and it just depends on what teams envision their roles being at the pro level. I think Tomlinson, we've talked about him often on this podcast over the last several months and how he could transition to the NFL, maybe as a free safety or maybe as a nickel corner. I don't know if he will stay outside as a corner in the NFL. That's just my opinion. I think he's had some issues in matchups against really big physical wideouts over the last year or so. Has gotten flagged for some holding calls and has just kind of struggled in some of those matchups. But nickel corner is a really valuable position in the NFL with today's offense quarterback driven leagues, and it's a quarterback driven league. You have teams throwing the ball all over the field, and you need more corners and guys who can cover so you can roll out a nickel package or even a dime package more frequently. So I think he has a lot of value there. I'm not saying he can't play outside. I just think he could really find his role and get on the field right away if he were to be a nickel corner in a defensive sub package for a competitive team. And then D Winters, I thought this past season did much more in the rushing the passer than we had seen from him at any point in his career. And I think that's part of the change in the defensive scheme going from a 4-2-5 to a 3-3-5, where the guys up front aren't generating as much of a pass rush, so you rely a little bit more on blitzing and your outside backers coming off the edges to create some pressure. So I thought he really excelled in that role. And again, these guys are super, super athletic. They all, like I mentioned before, they tested extremely well at the combine and practically every drill that they did. They're fast. They're both tremendous tacklers in the open field. And I don't see why either of them wouldn't be able to come in and find a spot on the two deep at the start of the season coming up.
I've been really surprised that D Winters hasn't been getting more buzz and hasn't been climbing up mock draft boards and draft big boards and all of that. I mean, he had a really strong season, showing a lot of different things that maybe weren't asked of him in previous seasons under the Gary Patterson defense. He put on an absolute clinic in the Fiesta Bowl, defensive MVP, doing everything there, and went to the Senior Bowl and was, I think, the defensive MVP of the practice week, at least for his team at the Senior Bowl. He performed at a high level at the combine. It just seems like a guy who does all of that and does everything well should be getting talked about in higher up than he is. I mean, I think he's trending towards a late 5th, 6th round draft pick, which it feels crazy to me. I mean, maybe that's purple glasses, but the way that the season that he had, the traits that he has, and I mean, again, he's put it on the film, and he's put it on demonstration in front of all of these guys. So, maybe he's flying a little under the radar as far as maybe national media that I'm able to see, and the NFL will rate him higher. But I feel like he should be a guy like that. And maybe it's another positional thing where linebacker. And if he's expected to be more of an inside linebacker that's not a pass rusher, edge type linebacker, that's just not valued as highly. So again, maybe that drops him down draft boards there as well. But I don't know. I guess I'm thinking a fifth round pick should be his floor, but it seems to me that the trend is towards a sixth round pick. So that's unfortunate. Then the next name on the list, I guess, would be Dylan Horton. Um, I think he's right there in that same range with Winters, but playing perhaps a more premium role, playing an edge rusher role, would give him an opportunity to maybe somebody's just going to take a chance on him just because he's got the physical tools. He put on some great tape against good teams like Texas, like Michigan, where some of his best games were against who were allegedly the best offensive lines that TCU played against. So I think that Dylan Horton is the next name and may go ahead of D Winters when the names start coming off the board in day 3.
Yeah, Dylan Horton was very much a man on a mission over that second half of the season. And when I go back and look at the stats sometimes, I'm kind of shocked that he wound up with 10 sacks because I want to say over the first half of the season, he may have had zero or one, but he was unbelievable over the second half of the season. And for a guy who's changed his body significantly from when he first started playing college football, was recruited out of high school
As a safety.
as a safety, and then started his career, I believe, at New Mexico, and then came over to TCU, stuck with the program after Gary Patterson left, and changed positions, going from being a D end in a 4-3, a four-man front to bulking up and moving a little bit further inside in a three-man front, and was just spectacular over the second half of the season. I think about the Fiesta Bowl game against Michigan. Another guy that has leadership qualities. A lot of these guys that we've talked about already. Quentin Johnston, he was a captain. Avila, he was a captain. Winters, I believe he was a captain.
Mm-hmm.
And Horton was the captain too. These are all guys that are experienced, they have leadership qualities. And I think for me, guys like Dylan Horton and Alana Lee and Max Duggan, these are your sixth, seventh round type picks where these are guys that were just producers at the college level, and their their tape may not stand out as much as some of the other players, or their athletic traits may not stand out as much, but production numbers don't lie. You know, Jay-Z said it best. Numbers don't lie, and um, they were producers for multiple years at a high level of college football. So I think these are guys that can come in and find a role on the three deep, or maybe even the practice squad. But I think coming in, if you were to ask me how many TCU players would be drafted, I would say that eight would be my number. I think with Johnston, uh, Avila, Miller, Trey Tomlinson, D Winters, Horton, Duggan, and Ali. I think all of those guys are going to be drafted. I think the guys who are kind of on the fringe would be like a Darius Davis or a DeMercado or some of the other guys who have declared and maybe didn't get as many of the Senior Bowl type looks or the Combine type looks. But what are your thoughts on that? How many guys do you see going in this draft over the next few days?
I think see, I feel like I'm being the negative one on here. Like I keep saying it's a round later. I keep saying I think 7 is probably the the ceiling. Um, I think it probably stops with Max Duggan. Um, I think Max will get drafted. I think there's I've been reading a lot of love for like Aiden O'Connell and a bunch of quarterbacks who I'm just you know even reading things about Will Levis might be the number 1 overall draft pick. What does Will Levis do that Max Duggan doesn't do? I not in college football. There was nothing that I mean Max Duggan did all the things. He commanded the offense. He can run the ball. He can throw the ball. I I don't know. I've never really understood the Will Levis love, but and obviously Max Duggan has a lot of tape that is not good. So I think that it's fair for him to be lower, but I I think he does get drafted, and I think he will he will at least make it very difficult on an NFL team to have to cut him or have to put him on a practice squad and make him available to the rest of the teams to pick up. So I think he'll come in and he'll do the work and he will get drafted. That's though I think that's where the line is drawn for me. I think Alana Lee. Uh, you said it. I mean, he's got all the leadership qualities. He's got the performance at a high level. He's put on good tape, but I can see him falling to a undrafted free agent where he's one of those immediately as soon as the draft closes, he gets
Hmm.
a call and is gets his pick of teams. He could go. He will get to choose where he gets to go. People will be um, calling his agent a lot. I think Darius Davis actually has a pretty good chance of getting drafted, just because you can't teach speed like he has. We've seen players that even if it's just as a specialist, I mean, kickers will get drafted, punters will get drafted.
Hmm.
Why can't the best kick returner get drafted?
Hmm.
So I think it's possible Darius Davis gets a look just because when you get down there in the end of the sixth round, the seventh round, you're in the 200s of draft picks. You're really throwing darts,
Hmm.
and when you have an opportunity to bring someone in who has a definable skill like Davis does, and if he never even sees the field as a receiver, as a threat in any way on offense, he's still a valuable member of your team if he's just returning kicks. Um, so I think his size makes it difficult for him to ultimately make a 53 man roster just because you've got to be able to do multiple things. It's going to be hard to keep a guy like that on a team at the end of the day. Um, but I think just having that speed will make it hard for him to go undrafted. Um, so yeah, I think 7.5 is the right number to set the over under. I
Yep.
think it's a tough question of under or over, but I'll take the under just to be contrarian from you.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with my 8. I feel pretty, maybe it's a little homerish, but I feel comfortable about it just because I think with some of those guys late in the draft, like Alana Lee, if he wants to play center in the NFL, especially for him to go from being a second team All American athletic to a first team All Big 12 in the span of one season, I think that says a lot about a player that maybe just, and he played a lot at SMU, but maybe just getting the opportunity to compete at a higher level um, brought out the best in him. And he was a guy that played multiple different positions at SMU. He played some tackle, he played center, obviously, and um, I think if he sticks at center, I have to believe that a team takes him just because of what he did this year. And then Darius Davis, I would love for him to be drafted. I just have a hard time convincing myself that a team will take him, knowing that I just see him as a return specialist. And not to say he can't prove me wrong and wind up being an effective slot receiver, wide receiver in the NFL, but the speed is definitely lethal in the return game. Um, we've seen the Dallas Cowboys take a chance on a former Frog and Cavante Turpin, who's wound up being a tremendous difference maker for that team in the third phase. So um, you mentioned Alana Lee could be that guy that gets the call immediately after the draft and says, we have an offer for you to come work out with us, come to minicamp. I think that's Darius Davis. He's going to have some calls from teams looking for return guys, and he'll have an opportunity to compete and earn a roster spot for a team that needs a difference maker on kicks and punts. So, um, well, we'll see what happens tomorrow. I'm excited as a Bears fan. I think there are going to be some more movement type things happening. Obviously, trading down from the number one pick already, getting a huge haul from Carolina with DJ Moore coming over and the number nine pick and some additional compensation. Super excited about that, and I think your Titans at number 11. I have to believe they might consider moving up if one of those quarterbacks starts to slip a little bit. I have to believe maybe they make a
Just
move because Malik Willis ain't it, and
no,
Ryan Tannehill ain't it either. So I'm not sure
not
who
for
the
long, for
quarterback may
sure.
be, if it's Anthony Richardson or somebody else. But Tennessee is my team to see if maybe they try to make a move to snag somebody.
Yeah, just please don't be Will Levis. I mean, I'm taking my stand now. Please, Titans. I'm sure you're listening to us right now. Just don't make it Will Levis. If it's CJ Stroud, I don't man, the hate I know we're going too long on the draft, but the hate for CJ Stroud I think has gone way too far. I think he is too good. He should be, if he falls past like 3 or 4, yeah, I think Titans, there will be a fight for people to go up and go get them, and it'll end up being really expensive, and maybe it'll be somebody have to trade up with your Bears to give you another whole haul of picks and to move down. But um, the only guy I think that we didn't touch on was Amari DiMarcado. I think he will be not drafted, but will get an opportunity. I think he will have a tough go at the running back position to earn a spot on a 53-man roster, but he will earn a spot. I'm pretty confident he'll earn a spot in summer camps, and he'll be in an NFL camp this offseason and have a chance to put his skills on display. But I don't see him getting drafted.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I think he definitely made some noise at the pro day. I know a couple of beat writers that cover TCU sports had some good things to say about him and the work that he put in on the pro day, which that's the one thing that I enjoy watching about the pro days is you see some guys like DeMarcado or Tay Barber or Luau Ugwak, some of these guys that
Gunnar
they're
Henderson,
Gunnar
yeah.
Henderson, they're not invited to the combine, they're not invited to any of the Senior Bowl festivities, but that doesn't mean you don't get an opportunity to work out. And I believe all 32 NFL teams plus some Canadian teams up north were in attendance at the TCU Pro Day this year to check everybody out. So um, hoping for some pleasant surprises over these next few days. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we said we'd go fast, and we spent a half hour on the draft. Here, you'll be hearing this the day of the draft, so um, we'll have all the coverage of everything that happens for our Horned Frogs as they move on to their professional careers. But looking forward at the TCU football team for the 2023 season, a couple of big additions in the transfer portal. I know last week we're talking a lot about all the potential losses out of the transfer portal, but we got two big additions this week with a wide receiver and a quarterback coming in from Power Five programs that have years of starting experience. The wide receiver Dylan Wright, who had been at Minnesota and previously at Texas A&M, he's a DFW local and was a high 4-star recruit coming out of high school. A big time guy, is built in the mold like Quentin Johnston. I mean, he's a big tall guy, big strong, but he really hasn't had the opportunity to produce at a high level yet with the Aggies or with the Gophers. So excited to see what he brings. I think it's a much needed piece to potentially add depth to the outside wide receiver position with Jordan Hudson in the portal and no longer with the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, I think the folks on social media crying about Jordan Hudson can go ahead and wipe those tears now because
Yeah.
TCU is getting a guy that had 645 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons at Minnesota, which is far more than what Jordan Hudson has been able to do in his freshman season. And I know a lot of folks have high optimism for Jordan Hudson being a high rated recruit coming out of high school, but TCU's getting a guy in Dylan Wright at 6'3", 210 pounds. He's going to be on the two deep right away, in my opinion. This is a guy who started several games for Minnesota and comes in as a experienced player. He started at Texas A&M, was there for 2 years, transferred to Minnesota. Now he's going to be coming in as a fifth year player that wants to compete for a starting job. So um, TCU again, they hit the wide receiver position hard in the portal earlier this year with guys like John Paul Richardson and Jack Beck and JoJo Earl. Also, Jalen Robinson from Ole Miss coming in, who a few years ago at UCF was a big time producer. So the veteran guys, TCU, those are the kind of guys that they're clearly targeting and valuing players who can come in and have a very brief learning curve, guys who can come in and contribute right away that don't need a year or two of development. So super excited to see what Dylan Wright can do. And then also we finally have our quarterback depth situation taken care of with the addition of Chance Nolan. He's coming in from Oregon State, where he played for 3 years and was the starter for Oregon State back in 2021. He had 19 touchdown passes, 10 interceptions, threw for well over 2,000 yards, has a lot of experience as a college player. He started his career at Middle Tennessee State in 2018, redshirted, wound up transferring to a JUCO Saddleback College where Amari DiMercato played his ball all the way back in 2017. Nolan balled out for Saddleback College, threw for well over 3,000 yards, and then earned an opportunity to go to Oregon State, where he's been for the last 3 years. So this is a guy that's coming in as a sixth year player and fills exactly what TCU was looking for in the sense that could he maybe win the starting job? Yeah, but I think this is a depth addition, someone who's going to come in and of course, compete in camp, but a player that if I had to put money on it will probably wind up number two or number three on the depth chart. I expect him and Josh Hoover, the freshman, to go at it for second on the depth chart behind Chandler Morris. And maybe maybe he does wind up challenging Chandler Morris for the starting job. Who knows? But regardless, it's a need that TCU has had for several months now with Sam Jackson leaving for Cal Berkeley, Max Duggan declaring for the draft. We've talked about the guys like Walker Howard and Sawyer Robertson and Jaden Rashada that TCU tried to snag at the last moment to get some depth on the roster, and they were just not able to hit on any of those players. So um, a good start to this post-spring portal, I would say, in terms of additions, and I'd expect there's going to be quite a few more players coming aboard too as the offseason continues here.
Yeah, for sure. On Nolan, I think he's. We talked last week about how during the spring game, it was so obvious that the drop off to the third quarterback, that not having a third uh, scholarship quarterback on the roster was really hurting the team through those practices. I think you just have to have that body, somebody of this kind of skill level and experience to come in and at least run those reps with those players, because those are all going to be critical players for the Horned Frogs throughout the season. But uh, whether Nolan ever sees the field at quarterback, I'm not sure. He did have a really good season with the Beavers a couple years ago as the starter. He got injured last year, and it just wasn't going to work out. Obviously, Oregon State brought in DJ Uyunglele from Clemson and brought in a high level freshman quarterback as well. So Nolan was within his right to go look for another opportunity. I don't know that this will be a fight for the starting spot, like you said. I can see it being that first depth chart before Colorado will say Chandler Morris at the top, and then Josh Hoover and Chance Nolan or as the number two. And, they probably know who would be the person that they throw in if Morris gets injured or, has to come out for a play. But I think that's probably where it is. And I hope that it doesn't lead to Josh Hoover transferring if that's how it shakes out, because I do think he's shown a lot of promise for TCU and is, we saw last season, you can be the number 2 quarterback on the opening day depth chart and go on to the Heisman stage. So, I hope that speaks to him and to Nolan, and maybe to anybody else in the transfer portal that's coming in. There's been the rumors around Tyler Buckner, the quarterback from Notre Dame, who was a very high level recruit coming out of high school, was a starter much of last season for the Irish. He's in the transfer portal. He's been linked a little bit with TCU. I think that might have just been because TCU hadn't signed anybody yet and had obviously been looking for someone. So maybe this Nolan news quiets the Buckner rumors, but I think the more the merrier. TCU probably should not be turning away high level talents like Buckner, whether he's that guy or not. I don't know. I think he's probably still behind Morris in my mind, but we'll see. There still may be more to come from that, and certainly elsewhere in the transfer portal for the Frogs, there'll be a lot more movement. There's the portal window is only open here for another 4 more days through the end of the month, so not a lot of time for people if they're trying to enter their names in. But we'll see what else comes in the next few days. Let's see. Anything else on football, Russ, before we move on to other topics?
No, I'll just add one little note about Josh Hoover. I think for him having a really good spring and coming back, I would just keep this in mind that Chandler Morris is going to be a 4th-year sophomore this coming season. He is draft eligible. If he has a great season, which of course, we hope that he has a great season, for all we know, he may declare for the NFL draft next year. And Chance Nolan is a 6th-year quarterback who I don't believe has any eligibility left after this coming season. So, with the possibility that one, maybe 2 quarterbacks are done after this coming season, Hoover would be returning for
He's next in line.
2024 as a 3rd-year player, probably a redshirt sophomore, with likely freshman or new veteran type quarterbacks coming in. So um, I think Hoover will stick around. I don't see that being an issue. Sonny flipped him from Indiana for a reason, and I think he's going to continue to build on the spring that he had this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And moving off of football into quickly on basketball, we talked last week about the potential for Avery Anderson III to join the Horned Frogs, and it was officially made, the commitment made since then. So Avery Anderson III will be joining TCU basketball for the upcoming season. Another guard, a starting guard coming into this program, potentially stepping into a starting role with the Horned Frogs. He's played a lot of basketball, a lot of Big 12 basketball coming in from Oklahoma State. So we talked about kind of what this means for TCU, but I think just seeing it actually come through is a positive. And I guess just to note, the NBA released its list of players who have officially put in paperwork to declare for eligibility to the NBA draft. it's something like 240 plus players uh, for not many spots in the NBA. So uh, Damian Ball was on that list. Emmanuel Miller had formally announced his declaration to the NBA, and we knew his name would be on the list. We knew Mike Miles's name would be on that list. We hadn't heard anything one way or another from Damian Ball. I think everyone has assumed that he would be on that list while still evaluating his options going forward. But to see his name there as a possible potential exit from the Frogs, as we all kind of have expected, or as a possibility, uh, Anderson could certainly step right into that spot and be a big time contributor, along with Jameer Nelson and Trey Tennyson at that guard spot, coming as new transfers.
And this is now the number 4 ranked transfer class in all of college basketball. So Jamie Dixon and his staff have really been working hard to quickly turn this thing around after uh, losing some key players in Mike Miles and possibly Emmanuel Miller, possibly Damian Baugh, but going to the tournament for 2 straight years and making it to the second round 2 years in a row, Dixon and his staff clearly don't want that momentum slowing down anytime soon, and they're getting a heck of a class put together here, and that doesn't include Jace Posey, the 4-star wing player, and then Isaiah Manning, who's a high-end 3-star forward as well. So um, it's kind of one of those things you almost salivate at the idea of what could this roster look like if they do get all of their guys back. One thing that it's not even on the run list, but we got to bring this up. Charles Chuckworth O'Bannon Jr. is coming back for a 7th season of college
Seven,
basketball. And I don't even, Anthony pointed it
seven.
out to me how he still somehow has eligibility. And I had to look it up because I know there were a couple of years at USC where he hardly played any games. I'm guessing that he got hurt in one of those seasons and then he redshirted in another one and now he's taking a COVID year. Is that what the deal is for him?
Yeah, yeah. So Chuck O'Bannon returning to TCU basketball next season for his 7th year in college basketball. He, yeah, while at USC, he like broke a hand one year, played one game, came back the next year, played like 3 games, and broke a hand, his other hand. So I think he, yeah, 2 injury red shirts and a COVID season has him back on the Van Wilder plan, the doctorate plan, the yeah, he's going to end up with every degree that TCU offers.
He's our version of Mitch Lightfoot officially. And I can't remember if Mitch Lightfoot played 7 or 8 years. I think it was 7, but
Yeah, the Perry, yeah,
that's still though. I mean that look, Chuck O'Bannon didn't have the kind of season this year that he did last year, but at the same time, he showed a lot of promise toward the end of the season this year, had some really nice games and shot the ball pretty well at some important moments. So if they can get him back to what he was doing last year and try and squeeze a little bit more out of him, he's a guy that can start, he can come off the bench, he's a good defender, he has plenty of experience as we know. So um, with him coming back, I mean, just getting back to my original point, just imagine, if Emmanuel Miller opts to come back and Damian Baugh opts to come back, the amount of talent and experience and athleticism that the Frogs would have on their roster, even without a Mike Miles Jr., I would think that expectations for next season could be even greater than they were coming into this past year. I mean, with everybody, this past season was kind of the run it back year with Miles and Lampkin and everybody coming back, but the depth that TCU is building right now for next year's roster, and we haven't talked about guys like Micah Peavy or Jacoby Coles or Xavier Cork or Rondell Walker if he can get it turned around. So the the talent and the numbers are building up quickly here for TCU, and Avery Anderson is a proven starter. He's a guy that can play really good defense as well. He's averaged well over an assist per game for his career. So just tremendous stuff all around from Jamie Dixon and his staff, what they've been able to do in the portal so far.
Yeah, and just to note before we move off of basketball, the departing transfers have found their homes. So Shahada Wells, the guard who came to TCU from UT Arlington, has moved on from the Horned Frogs to McNeese State in Louisiana. Then we've got PJ Haggerty has gone to Tulsa, and Suleiman Doumbia has moved on to Sam Houston State. So um, now I think all of the former Frogs have found their basketball home for next season. So wish them the best of luck, and as long as they're not playing against the Frogs, that they can go and have great careers elsewhere. And I think that they'll have every opportunity for that. All right, so off of basketball and onto baseball, where thank goodness there was a midweek game that TCU had this week that allows us to not just uh, sulk in our baseball woes, but baseball over the weekend gets swept in what was a huge series um, that TCU really needed to show up in. We talked about it last week being a really turning point spot for the Frogs, where you had an opportunity to go jump up to the top of the conference, and instead you get swept in pretty embarrassing fashion. You look really bad in some of these games, um, and really just no clutch hitting, uh, pretty awful pitching. But Russ, take us through what happened in Morgantown against the Mountaineers over the weekend.
Yeah, I'll try to keep my thoughts as concise as possible without getting into some rambles. No promises there, but I'll do my best here. Just starting with the score. So TCU losing 5-4 on Friday, losing 7-4 on Saturday, and then actually getting run ruled on Sunday, 17-7, losing that game in only 6 innings to concede the sweep. The Frogs came in 7-5 in the conference. They're now 7-8. Did pick up a win, like you said, against Dallas Baptist on Tuesday. So yesterday, that team came in ranked number 19 in the country. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes here, but the Friday and Saturday games for TCU it really just came down to not being able to cash in with runners in scoring position. And for what it's worth, the offense has been tremendous this season. I'm not going to ramble about the offense too much because they did a great job of getting guys on base. It was just one of those weekends where they couldn't cash in. They had 10 guys left on base Friday, 12 guys left on base Saturday. I was watching the Friday game on ESPN Plus, and between the sixth, seventh, and eighth innings, they had a bases loaded situation and two other situations with two runners on base, and they couldn't score. And they ultimately lose the game by 1 run. So it's just a backbreaker, really, of a loss to start the series. Cole Klecker did not have his best stuff, but just couldn't cash in with runners in scoring position. Saturday was very much the same thing, and then Sunday was just, frankly, an embarrassing loss to close out the series. And for what it's worth, again, the offense, Cole Fontanelle hits a grand slam kind of in garbage time. It's very much the Chris Paul hits the clutch three to bring Phoenix within 42 or whatever that meme is, but it
Yeah.
was 11-1 at this point in the game, and Cole Fontanelle hits a grand slam, and Elijah Nunez follows that up with a 2-run homer, and all of a sudden it's 11-7. You think, oh my goodness, wait a minute, is this going to be a reverse Texas Tech situation where maybe TCU can somehow steal a crazy game, but the Frogs ultimately give up 6 runs in the bottom of the sixth inning to get run rolled. And let me just, for full context and full transparency's sake here, TCU did not name a starter for Sunday coming into the weekend. We knew that Luis Rodriguez was going to start on Saturday. He had a pretty good outing. It was a quality outing, 5 innings, 3 earned runs. I believe he had 5 strikeouts as well. I think he's earned another opportunity to start this weekend along with Cole Klecker. But we didn't know who was going to start on Sunday. It wound up being Ben Abelt, who we've talked about uh, quite a bit on the podcast. He seems to pitch in every other game for TCU now, but he came in with I believe a 6.1 ERA and had been kind of up and down his last couple of outings. And West Virginia, I believe, deployed mostly right-handed hitters. So why you're rolling with a lefty, I really don't know. Conventional baseball wisdom says otherwise, but TCU defensively makes an error in the first inning. West Virginia scores 2 runs. So you're off to a bad start. Ben Abelt doesn't have his best outing. He only goes 3 innings, gives up 5 runs, 3 are earned, 5 hits, 3 walks, and 4 strikeouts. So a very inconsistent performance there, but this is where things just kind of fell off the rails for TCU. The Frogs wound up using 8 pitchers in this game. In a 6 inning game, they needed to use 8 different guys, and you had 3 different guys who came into the game and could not record an out. So basically, how it started was Mason Speaker comes in the fourth inning, and God bless him, he should not be pitching in any competitive environment for TCU. His ERA is well over 7. He's objectively one of the worst pitchers on the staff and should not be in the game unless it's a complete blowout. The Frogs were still semi in the game, but Speaker comes in. He's only able to get 1 out. He gives up 3 runs. At this point, it's 8-1. After that is Sam Staudenborough, who unfortunately, after a really solid stretch of pitching, has really struggled over his last couple of outings. He doesn't record an out. He gives up a walk, a hit batter, a hit, and 3 earned runs without recording an out. So after that, I believe Sarloos goes to Hunter Hodges. It's 11-1 at this point. Hunter Hodges only throws 4 pitches, but he does get an out. One of those pitches was a wild pitch, but he's taken out of the game after only throwing 4 pitches and getting 1 out. Garrett Wright came in after that in the most garbage time, non-high leverage situation imaginable. But he has another really good outing. He goes over 2 innings, strikes out 4 guys, holds West Virginia off the board. Fontenelle hits a grand slam. Frogs are trying to work their way back into it. Cam Brown comes on now. I think this is the fifth inning or the sixth inning at this point. It's 11-7, I believe, and Cam Brown comes on. Cam Brown didn't get a weekend start. He's really been struggling out there his last 3 or 4 outings. He does not record an out. In fact, he walks 3 consecutive batters and throws 2 wild pitches and leaves the game without recording an out. Jax Traeger, the freshman, came in after that. He's pitcher number 7, gives up 2 runs, 2/3 of an inning. River Ridings comes on after that. He's pitcher number 8, and he gives up 1 or 2 runs and doesn't record an out either. So the full context for how bad the pitching was on Sunday, and I think TCU baseball Twitter was very deflated after this weekend series. I think a lot of people were just kind of wondering, like, I can't even with this baseball team right now. Like, no one really knows what's going on. But we get into the Tuesday game, a really important midweek game against Dallas Baptist, coming in again, number 19 in the country. Braden Sloan doesn't get the start. It's Chase Hoover instead. Um, Different pitcher, kind of same result for TCU in this one. Chase Hoover only goes 2 innings. He walks 4 guys, gets into quite a bit of trouble early, but Carson Bowen with perhaps one of the most clutch hits of the entire season for TCU, a grand slam, Oppo Taco, ball's kind of flirting with the foul pole down the right field line, stays in play, and TCU, who was behind early in the game, takes the lead and ultimately wins 8-5. Cohen Feezer and Ryan Vanderhey combined to throw the final 3 innings of shutout relief. Cohen Feezer, someone who needs to start really getting more run as the season moves forward here. I'm not exactly sure why he hasn't pitched a whole lot. Maybe there have been some injury concerns there, but he had another plus outing. Tuesday, and the Frogs are able to come back and win this one 8-5. And Charles Baggerly, who was very briefly, I believe, with us here at Frogs of Warren, has done a really nice job as a student writer for TCU 360, and previously with the Dallas Morning News, had some interesting insight into post West Virginia weekend series, how the team held a players only meeting after that series and talk things over about how to bring this season back, because at that point it's 22-18 overall, and you're slipping down the conference standings, and you got a not only a tough game after that against DBU, but now you have Texas coming up this weekend. And so kind of beyond the make or break point of the season in my opinion for TCU, but so some cool insight there into just kind of what the players were going through in the locker room after that weekend series against the Mountaineers. But um, glad that we do have some positive baseball news to share with this win, and hopefully they continue to carry that over into the weekend.
Yeah, look, with the Longhorns coming into town this weekend, um, you go win that series, make this the turning point that things at least get better. I think we're probably out of reach of hosting a regional or anything like that, but getting to the tournament, you can really start to lock in your role as maybe move up from I think today's D1 baseball bracket projection had TCU as a 3 seed in the Stanford regional. I think you could work your way up to a 2 seed somewhere. But I have to think that it had to feel like just such a sigh of relief, a weight lifted that this 5-game losing streak was gone. You defeat a really good Dallas Baptist team that has been projected to be a host in the tournament. So I don't know how it's going to shake out with Texas coming into town, but at least the vibes are a little bit better. Um, the fan base is feeling a little more positive, and you could go into that series with still knowing that there's a lot of work to be done, and that you can have some belief in the ability of the Frogs to go get it done. So I'm sure it'll be rocking. I hope the weather clears up here in Fort Worth. It's been pretty nasty here. We had another hailstorm come through. It's been cold. Ready for it to go ahead and turn over to spring and get some nice weather out here to go spend some time out at Lupton and go see the Frogs take on the Longhorns this weekend. Okay. Anything else on baseball?
Nope. If you let me keep going, I'm gonna keep rambling about how bad the
All right.
pitching's been, and we're gonna be at the hour and 15-minute mark by that
We're
point. So
already
let's
past the hour. God bless you guys. Anybody who's still listening to us, we appreciate you so much. But I have to next talk about men's tennis takes home the Big 12 championship, defeating number 1 Texas for the second time this year with a trophy on the line, and TCU takes down the Longhorns 4-1 in the Big 12 title game, and still somehow is sitting at number 2 overall in the national rankings. Whatever computer is doing that calculation needs to get it together. Texas still sits at the top, but in any case, Horned Frogs put on a great show in Lawrence for this tournament, sweeping through Oklahoma State, a ranked Oklahoma State team, and then um, taking down the rival Longhorns there in pretty good fashion. Luke Famba gets the finisher, gets the final point to take down the Longhorns. It was really just an impressive work. 6 of the Horned Frogs earned all tournament team honors. Um, this squad is ready for the postseason, is ready for what's coming in the NCAA tournament. Already in the top 80, there are 5 Horned Frog singles players, and 3 of the TCU doubles pairings are listed in the top 90 of the rankings. So TCU's a very deep squad. It's going to take several rounds of a tournament before they match a team as talented and as deep as they are, but certainly they'll have to go get it done. The selection show will be on Monday this week, May 1st at 5:30 on the NCAA website. But almost certainly, I think without a doubt, TCU will be a host for that regional. So you will definitely get another chance to go out to the purple courts and see what the Horned Frogs have to offer, and we'll see what the bracket looks like for them and how it shakes out. I mean, I think there's the national stage for them is set to where there's a pretty clear top two at the tier, and that's Texas and TCU, who have split the four matches they've had against each other. And then there's a pretty good drop off to the next Ohio State. And then there's another drop off to Kentucky, and then there's kind of everybody else under those four. So we'll see how the bracket ends up getting set, but I would expect those four to be the four top seeds across the regions, and with each very likely to make a run to this year. The championship rounds are in Orlando, Florida, so a lot of excitement for TCU tennis going forward.
Yeah, I would love to see round five between the Frogs and the Longhorns having four matches under their belts now, and each team has won two. TCU, of course, doing more damage with more hardware on the line. The first win against Texas coming for the indoor ITA National Championship trophy, and then this time around securing the Big 12 championship trophy with another win. And impressive effort all around. Getting the doubles point early in this match to set the tone, I think, was huge. You had the three doubles pair, I believe they won their match pretty easily. I want to say it was 6-2, something along those lines. And then you had a really tight match for the second victory in doubles play, and the Frogs were able to get it either 7-5 or 7-6 to take that point. So that was
Yeah,
huge.
win into tiebreak. The doubles points, two of the doubles points were in tiebreakers simultaneously, so it could
Mhm.
have flip of a coin could have gone either direction to give the point to the Longhorns, but TCU perseveres there.
Yeah, and that's how a lot of these matches, especially in singles, have seemed to go with the Longhorns, where you can almost put money on the match going three sets, and it could be only one or two breaks that decide the entire match. It's very high level tennis where it's almost the expectation that you maintain serve, and if you are broken on serve once or twice, it's a big hill to climb to try and even the match back out. So just a super impressive performance by David Roditi and his kids, and 22-2 now on the season. And like you said, this team is deep. This team is versatile. It's extremely talented. It's experienced. It's coached incredibly well, and this team is primed for a big time push here in the postseason. And before we move on, real quick, I will just give a very brief mention to the women's tennis team. They did win a match at the start of their Big 12 tournament, beating West Virginia and then losing in the quarterfinal round. So going 1-1 there, and I believe finishing the season with a winning record. So just floating that in there. I'm not sure if there's any kind of postseason coming up for the women's team, but in the spirit of tennis, let's give a little shout out there to the women's team on a successful season.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. I think that they are ranked in like the top 50 nationally, but they were like the 8 seed in the Big 12. I think
Mhm.
the Big 12 women's tennis is really strong, and Texas ends up winning the conference tournament on that side, on the women's side. So we'll see if the TCU women do get an at-large bid into that tournament. I think they're right there, probably on the bubble near the cut line. So we'll keep an eye out for that one.
Exactly. And going into some golf news now, we'll hit on TCU women's golf. They Competed in the Big 12 tournament earlier this week and finished in third place. TCU had two players, Caitlin McNabb, who is now the school record holder in single season Eagles and career Eagles. She was named all tournament along with Sofia Barroso Sa. So two all tournament players for the Frogs, and they have uh, found out their postseason fate. They will be playing in the NCAA regional tournament, the Raleigh Regional, as a number 7 seed. The Frogs will start playing on May 8th at the Lonnie Pool Golf Course out in Raleigh, North Carolina. So the Lady Frogs will have a couple of weeks to prepare for that. It's the 25th tournament selection for the women's program in 27 years. So congratulations to the women's golf team on a good showing at the Big 12 tournament and also for qualifying for the NCAA postseason. The men's golf team concluded the Big 12 tournament earlier today. TCU finished in second place, was actually in third or fourth for most of the tournament, and then just got cooking during the final round. Had multiple players shooting in the high 60s, and TCU ultimately finishes in second place. TCU had three all tournament players for this tournament: Jacob Skov Olsen, Gustav Fremont, and Max Gibudo. If I butchered any of the names, I
Well done.
apologize, but gofrogs.com, put pronunciation guidance, help me out a little bit with some of these foreign players. But I guess that the men's team will probably find out its postseason fate in a couple of days here, and when we do get that, we will share that when we can. So, really good golf being played all around by both the men and the women for TCU. And Anthony, I'll go ahead and throw it back to you with some beach volleyball information coming up here.
Yeah, TCU Beach Volleyball will be the 1 seed in the CCSA Conference Championship coming up this weekend in Huntsville, Alabama. You will be able to watch it on YouTube. TCU is number 2 in the country right now overall, with just one loss on the season to number 1 UCLA. In this conference tournament, as there'll be a lot of high level beach volleyball to be played. Of the 6 teams that make the conference tournament, 5 of them are ranked. Obviously TCU, and then number 4 Florida State, number 6 LSU, number 7 Grand Canyon, and number 16 South Carolina. So an opportunity for the Frogs, if this squad is to run through that conference tournament, earn that conference title, to really put some big numbers on the board that could propel it towards a perhaps the number 1 overall seed going into the NCAA tournament the following week in Gulf Shores, Alabama. So we won't hear more about where that bracket won't be revealed until after this kind of ends, but that's this Sunday. So we'll find out Sunday morning where TCU will play, where they'll be seated. You really want to kind of get one of those top seeds to be able to get the bye and to avoid one of the play-in games there in the first round of that tournament. And it is, I think it's a double elimination once you're into that second round. So if you go ahead and get into that second round, you really increase your chances to continue forward to the championship. So hopefully TCU continues to stay in one of those spots. Today, that CCSA conference revealed its conference regular season awards, and TCU came out with the brooms and swept all the awards, the major awards. For the second year in a row, TCU won Coach of the Year with Hector Gutierrez, going back to back, won Pair of the Year going back to back this season, unanimous selection, Daniela Alvarez and Tanya Moreno. And for the second year in a row, TCU has the Freshman of the Year in the conference. Last year it was Ana Vergara. This year it's Annalena Hamel. And so TCU, obviously, as one of the top teams in the country, earned those places. Also, on the all conference team, certainly Alvarez and Moreno were placed there again, along with the TCU pairing of Haley Brockett and Rochelle Scott. So I think I don't know if it's 6 or 8, but of the 3 or 4 pairings that earn all conference honors, TCU had 2 of the pairings. Uh, another extremely successful season for these Horned Frogs, and some big matches coming up on the sand, and there will be ways to watch all of these contests. I think the NCAA tournament might be on ESPN Plus. It's somewhere available streaming, and we'll certainly give all that information once that is known. And I guess to close it out, we do have one bit of extremely sad news. We send our condolences, our love, and all of our prayers and thoughts to TCU rifle team, as TCU freshman star of the TCU rifle team, Julie Johannesson, we found out passed away today. All of our thoughts to her family, and to all of those at TCU who know and love her, and truly one of the standouts, one of the best rifle players in all of the country, perhaps the best shooter in all of NCAA. So just a tragedy, a terrible situation for TCU, for the TCU family, for her family, and for the TCU rifle team.
Yeah, just I was at work earlier today, and I was just kind of scrolling through, my TCU athletic tweets. I always try to scroll through and see what all the programs are up to, and yeah, I saw that. I was just, it kind of took my breath away for a while. And just anytime you see a young athlete, she's only 21 years old, and of course we don't know what happened there, but it's just it's heartbreaking, for a young athlete and a young girl that was coming into the prime of her life, and was off to an unbelievable start with the rifle team. It shot 2 perfect scores, had been the best shooter on the team all year, and really is one of the top shooters not only in the country but even internationally. I believe she recently competed in a World Cup event overseas, and was just returning from that, and then this news breaks today. So it's incredibly heartbreaking and sad, and our thoughts are, of course, with Julie's family and the TCU rifle program, and all of her friends and family and everybody who knew her. And it's just uh, a somber and unfortunate way we have to end the podcast today, but just something that we did want to pass along because it is a newsworthy event in TCU sports. So again, prayers to Julie's family and friends, and keeping all of them in our thoughts this evening.
Yep, and with that we'll close it, and we'll just say go Frogs.
Go Frogs.